one thing I value most about people is their hunger for success. It's not like what you have achieved and you're satisfied with it, because life is a journey and there's always something out there to learn, something out there to achieve. One thing about data, it never lies. So it's going to spit the facts no matter what. Reality is out there. So no matter how you take it, not going to change unless you work towards it. I don't care about what kind of schools you've been to, but if you had taken courses that were not part of your curriculum or you were a self-taught professional, I would respect that. I feel like I've been having more conversations with AI these days than actual persons.
We are live on the Objective Hiring Show. Today, we're joined by Guru. Guru, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Hey, thank you, Tim. Thanks for inviting me.
And where I always love to start with guests is just to hear a little bit more about yourself. Who are we talking to today?
Hey, folks. My name is Gurkiranjot Singh. I go by Guru. I'm currently working as a director of data science for a startup called Branch Lab. I've been working in the field of data science for almost 7 years now, from working for startups to big tech like Apple, EchoStar. I believe in providing scalable solutions which have impact.
And tell us a little bit more about Branch Lab. What's that company all about?
So Branch Lab is about ID-less pharma marketing. We are the first solution in United States providing ID-less marketing for pharma sector, which means we do not know who the individuals are. So it's the most ethical way to market medication to customers. And it's based on all the statistical and machine learning models that we have native to our system.
Nice. And how do you enjoy the startup life? Can be a little bit chaotic at times, but also kind of fun as well, I find.
Oh, definitely. It was a bit of an experience because I started my career with the startup itself, but nothing prepared me for Branch Lab. It's a really fast-paced environment. So yeah, it's just taking the initiative. Also looking at, like, ownership is a big part of being in a startup life than being on a corporate life. So yeah, it's been an amazing experience and I'm so far loving it. One thing I value most about people is their hunger for success. It's not like what you have achieved and you're satisfied with it, because life is a journey and there's always something out there to learn, something out there to achieve. So it's a constant progress, and that also I've tried to implement in my life. So data science, be it data science or powerlifting, I also compete in USAPL. So I'm always chasing numbers, man.
That's good. So I'm based in Sydney, and Australian culture is pretty different to American culture. I, in my mind at least, the kind of character you're describing, I feel like is quite American in a sense, like that kind of go-getter. Even though they've won once, they want to win again. That kind of thirstiness, particularly for business. Is that a fair characterization? Like, is that actually true? Does it really the land of opportunity in that way?
Definitely. That's why I guess I'm here. Moved from India like 6 years ago, and I've been loving it because it's all about the mindset switch, and it's like hunger to like achieve more and get better. But at the same time, I believe there should be a good balance between work life and your personal life. So once you find that you're Zen or Ikigai, I feel like you're just golden.
And is your Zen your powerlifting? Is that part of it?
I would say using data to solve problems. So I involve that in my program, powerlifting program, optimizing my day. So it's just like data fascinates me so much that everything around it just has data. So everything fascinates me what I do.
That's great. And what is it about the data that appeals to you? Is it the fact that you suddenly see patterns you otherwise wouldn't see if you didn't have the data, and you can see that improvement based on reviewing and optimizing your performance?
Oh yeah. So one thing about data, it never lies. So it's gonna spit the facts no matter what. And a good data scientist or a good data professional should look at data for what it is. So at that point, there's nothing positive or nothing bad about the data. It's always I would say it's a hint, or for lack of better, I don't have any better word for that, but it's like it shows you the journey and how you need to pivot your business or your personal life. So it's like a benchmark that's been set, and now you know how you performed in your personal life or in your professional life, and then you just grasp that data and optimize your way ahead.
Have you ever felt the sensation of like the data is sometimes almost too confronting, like especially when it's about you personally, you're tracking like personal metrics about powerlifting and other things. Have you ever felt, oh wow, that's numbers not as good as I hoped? Has it ever had a negative effect on your kind of thought process?
Um, yes, I would be wrong if I say it never affects you. Like, we are emotional beings, but it's more about looking at the brighter side in all scenarios. So I would try to interpret it like, oh, I figured this thing out. May it be with my powerlifting or just like me going out partying. I've tend to know that it ruins my sleep for next 3 days. Even though I won't stop partying, I have this tool that helps me analyze that. It's just like realizing certain things and then optimizing towards it. It's like you make sure that you have a less workload the next week, so you get to enjoy your party life and also be able to perform. I'm sorry. So yeah, it's just about finding balances, but yeah, it you still get pushed at the like reality is out there. So no matter how you take it, it's not going to change unless you work towards it.
I agree completely. And I personally feel like, in general, companies don't necessarily use enough data when it comes to recruitment and hiring. I'd say the typical company and hiring manager would have, imagine a spectrum from like data driven to intuition based. I feel like most people are further towards the intuition side of the spectrum, even actually analytics leaders, something that surprised me over the past 6 years. Uh, is it like, and I'm trying to avoid, I'm always trying to think about what the reluctance is to use data. Is it because it's about people that suddenly there's almost an ick or a reluctance in a way that there wouldn't be for marketing, for sales, for operations, for things that are almost decoupled from the person? And there's this weird feeling we have when we're starting to say, well, this person's objectively better than this one in these dimensions. Like we feel like we can't reduce humans to those numbers or something. What do you think?
So I think we have to like any problem, like we need to identify the root cause for it. And I think the biggest root cause around this, the whole hiring process, is we are social creatures. We seek acceptance, and also we also provide acceptance. So in that aspect, the emotional part, it plays a really strong role when it like looking at the candidates. And surely there is some biases, and if it was a perfect world, I would want to remove all the biases out. But sadly, it's an ongoing process. Nobody's like free of bias. So there's a lot of biases that affect the hiring side. But one thing I would like to bring up around this is a person that fits good in the as a company culture and has basic skills to learn. I think no candidate is bad candidate, at least if they meet that criteria, because skills can be taught. Company culture and company values and team values cannot be taught.
You mentioned uh, that ability to learn, that growth mindset, I guess some people would call it, being so important. And I'd say, if I were to summarize the conversations I've had on this podcast, I reckon that would be the single biggest factor that people are now thinking about when they're hiring someone, even more so than their measurable technical skills, for example. That kind of growth mindset, willingness, ability to learn. Do you have any way to coax that out in an interview? How can you really tell who has that and who doesn't? Any suggestions?
Yes. So I look for certain points, and this is my just my personal watch list. If a candidate, first of all, the biggest thing I would look for is self driven learning. I don't care about what kind of schools you've been to, but if you have taken courses that were not part of your curriculum, or you are self taught professional, I would respect that, and it shows like you did it out of passion, not out of curriculum. And then there's like how excited they are about the work and the job itself, like descriptions. Because like we are data professionals. You've been in the field for like 6 years. I know you've previously managed teams, and now you are heading this startup. We cannot shut up about things, like about data. We can talk all day and it won't be a problem. So I tend to look for candidates who are like so excited about talking about their work, also asking good and questions about pinpointed questions about the job. So that shows like they're already taking an initiative. And also coachability, in the sense like I would purposely try to ask them a question which I would know they don't know the answer, and I'm seeking for an answer which says, hey, I don't know that, I can get back to you with the research, or I would love you to explain it to me on the call. Like, interview is no interview is perfect, and there's no one benchmark, like no model, that one model fits all, machine learning. So it's just like an ongoing communication where you can gauge the initiative and the candidate.
Yeah, that's an interesting tactic, to ask them something that you know they don't know. And so when you've asked that, like, what would be an example of not a great answer, where they try to bluff and pretend like they know, for example, or they just can't handle, they don't have the humility to admit that they don't, or
Uh, yeah. So personally, me interviewing, I used to have like this 5 second rule, and I have to, and like obviously we all use this tricks, and this is a good trick out for all the aspirants for job applications and who are looking job seekers. Is like you always ask them to repeat a question when you're not sure about the answer, because that gives you another 5 second to process. But after that 5 second, if I was still not sure about the answer, it's always better to accept the fact and try getting a different question from them, which you are more comfortable talking about. So that's something that I've noticed with the candidates, is because they think they should know everything, which is not the case. Even their leaders would have limited knowledge, and it's collaborative knowledge in the industry, because you work as a team, you don't work as an individual. You don't have to know everything. So it's just like accepting the fact and not trying to push some just other words which don't make any sense. I would say people should be avoiding that. And that's the worst answer, which I don't expect from good candidates.
yeah, I agree completely. It's an especially bad tactic if, as a candidate, you're being interviewed by an expert. Like, I can maybe imagine bluffing your way through a talent acquisition or HR interview, but if you're interviewing with your manager, who you know knows what they're asking about, and you know you don't, it's maybe not a great effort to just wing it and blag, because that's gonna backfire, because you're gonna look pretty silly, I think.
Definitely. And it's just the amount of pressure the candidates have. Sometimes they know the answer, but they're still unsure about it. So like I wouldn't call anyone out, but I would just say it's like follow the 5 second rule. And if you're not sure after those 5 seconds, it's better to admit to that. And interviewers are smart enough, they already have backup questions. So you'll be fine.
You also mentioned um, an appealing candidate trait of having, proactively gone into the field themselves. It's not just something that to do as part of their degree, but they kind of took it upon themselves. I can remember one candidate we hired a few years ago as an engineer who kind of fit into this category. He was doing I think, electronics degree at the university here in Sydney. He'd actually dropped out of that, done, I think, a 4-week web development boot camp. And in just those 4 weeks, had managed to learn enough, as well as on his own back, to ship an app into the iOS store with some kind of music aggregation app, something that like hooked into Spotify and, looked at your data and then gave you recommendations, something like that, if I remember correctly. And we interviewed him and he came and showed us the app, and, he was really proud of it, which was cool. For me, that spoke volumes, because, he had enough effort to go off and do that himself and actually get something shipped, like a working live product, not a most complicated one, but it was out there. And that's amazing. Like, nobody asked him to do that. He didn't have to do that. He clearly wanted to do it. And I thought, well, that's great. Like, all he has to do is that every day in our company with other features and And that's the job as an engineer, really, is shipping stuff again and again and again. And so, yeah, I completely agree with you. Looking for those kinds of characters is really great. Uh, One thing we should definitely discuss is, of course, AI, particularly in the hiring context. But before that, I'm interested to hear in your personal life if you've started to use, ChatGPT, Claude, these kinds of large language model products for anything in particular, and if so, what?
Yeah, I feel like I've been having more conversations with AI these days than actual persons. So it's I feel like everyone should it's not the giant people are building or the demon. It's like it is out there to actually help you out. So anyone who's not using AI should try using it because it's if it's gonna replace anyone's job, it's the people who wouldn't know how to use AI and leverage its knowledge.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I feel like if I had a candidate now, particularly for some kind of technical role, like an engineer, a data scientist, or someone close to the field, and they said, "Nah, never used AI, don't believe in it," that would almost be like someone saying they don't use a computer. I still use paper and pen. Well, yeah, you can, but you're missing something probably.
Yeah, definitely. I totally resonate with that.
And so anything particular that you use it for? Like I've used ChatGPT a lot recently for language lessons. Actually, I use it as a tutor for Italian, and it's amazing that it can just suddenly start speaking to me in Italian and giving me little quizzes, and it's a free tutor. It's really cool.
That's a good use case because I'm trying to learn Spanish, so I I should definitely try that. I do have like personal chats built up. I one role assigned to AI is as my mentor for my goals. There's another role as a fitness coach where like I ask him day to day questions. I do have a coach, guys. Shout out to Tanner, but I still would leverage AI to ask for like trivial questions of which I want more insights about. I would plug in my personal programs to it and ask it like how do I navigate through certain steps. And in general, like one thing I've learned from an expert is they generally have a chat with AI about some topic that's been like in their mind. They've been thinking out loud, but now they started interpreting and talking with AI about the topic. So it kind of gives you a more neutral approach if you say so. But you have to be pretty careful with the prompts you provided because meanwhile it's answering your question, it's learning from your prompts. So it can hallucinate. So that's why we have prompt engineers and all RAG LLM stuff. But in general, like yes, I use it for almost every aspect of my life these days.
Yeah, that's amazing. And one thing I noticed myself in using large language models was I felt like I was more receptive to its feedback than I might be from a human in some scenarios because I know there's no personal stuff between us. It's just a large language model. And so I was almost willing to learn from it more than what I would a human, which is maybe my own failing. But it was a really interesting use case, I think.
No, that's why I have him as my mentor because it's just easier to find your fallacies from someone who's unbiased. So I totally resonate with that too.
Yeah. And what about then in the hiring context? Like, have you started to dabble with, I'm not sure if you've been doing much hiring recently, but have you started to dabble with any AI hiring tools at all?
Uh, so at Branch Lab, the answer is no because we are a small company and we are big on company culture. So the resumes are getting vetted by personally by the individual teams. As it comes to like resume screening or like if we think about it, there's really pros to this side and there's a bunch of cons to this AI hiring. So I don't know if you want me to delve into that because I can talk about it.
Yeah, yeah, love to hear that kind of pros and cons.
Yes. So AI has been a game changer, especially for large organizations where the number of resumes are in thousands. It can easily help you parse through those resumes. So first use case is high applicant volume. Second is you want to identify data patterns in the whole applicant side. So it that enables standardization. It also like can take care of inclusive hiring, but we do have a use case or an actual policy with Amazon's AI, which actually failed to be unbiased and was preferring male candidates over female candidates, and it was just like AI model for Amazon was a disaster because it was trained on a data which had majority male candidates. So it started using the names which were sounding more male as a bias and giving them a preference over female candidates. Similarly, there's this is one of the cons, but I think L'Oreal reduced their assessment time from 40 minutes to 4 minutes with the help of AI. There's a bunch of companies that have done the same things, but on the other side, if we look at first the Amazon's example, the pitfalls, we AI isn't inherently unbiased. It learns from the historical data, and if the data reflects any biased hiring practices, AI would mirror and even amplify in many cases because it's just training on itself. Um, just mentioned the AI, Amazon AI tool. Also, I think there was a research from Washington University which said certain AI models had favoritism, 85% favoritism to male names than female names. And nobody trained those models. It was the historical data, and generally, certain tech jobs are male dominant. And that's how the bias was created. So, in short, I would say it's AI is more augmentation than automation. So you cannot completely rely on AI because there's skills that cannot be measured. And I feel like for those skills, tools like Aluba play a great role where the candidates are like specifically like they find candidates that specifically cater to your skill set because it's more personalized approach, even though with like we would say targeted testing or skill set analysis, but at the same time like there's a human approach needed for AI to be used in a condition where it's more it's not like the magic bullet, but a powerful tool which is being used responsibly.
I think it's worth delving into the kind of screening problem in a bit more detail because I feel like that's where 99% of candidates get rejected. Then any improvement in that process, whatever's happening at the moment, I think could yield pretty special results. And so I wanted to share an example of an experiment I've seen, which has been done in different markets. And it's where the researchers basically apply to hundreds of different roles using different applications. And they split the applications into different buckets. And the only difference between the resumes is just the name. And so what they're doing is they're testing, is there some kind of bias against people from a certain background or a certain gender or what have you, anything you can infer from the name. And so one that was done in Australia, I think 3 years ago by the University of Sydney, was to apply to, as I said, many, many jobs and compare people with an Anglo-Saxon first and last name, Chinese first name, sorry, Anglo-Saxon first name, Chinese last name, Chinese first and last name. So 3 groups. They applied to thousands of jobs and measured the callback rate. And the only real difference between those buckets of resumes was the name. So they kind of isolated that variable reasonably well. They found that if you applied for a job with an Anglo-Saxon first and last name, you get a 12% callback rate on average. Chinese first and last name, only 4% callback. And so this is before AI is involved. So this is all human-based screening that's being done. And so that basically means, yeah, if you had a Chinese name in Australia, you have only 1/3 the chance of a callback as an equivalent person with an Anglo-Saxon name, which is dreadful. It's so unfair. Um, that is unfair. It's, yeah, beyond unfair. Uh, and I personally feel like one way out of this might be to use larger language models to do the screening of the resumes. I think it could be done in a reasonably unbiased way. I wanted to just share the idea with you. Like, we have a minor feature that we implemented along these lines. I'd like to get your feedback. The way we did it was basically to say, resume comes in, we have the job description. So we have those two things on either side. With the resume, we extract the skills, the experience, the whatever. So we're left with that. There's no other information left after we've extracted that. There's no knowledge about who the candidate is or anything like that. And it's just like a text match between the two documents. Then we score, how well it matches across those criteria, come up with an overall number. That's it. I feel like that's should be reasonably unbiased, with maybe the only thing being if there's something inherent to the way people write that might indicate who they are or something like that. But otherwise, I feel like we've nullified most of the potential bias from the person. What do you think of the approach?
Actually, it's a pretty genuine, and it seems like this approach would be working, but at the same time, we have to do the analysis to just able to call it out and see like how it performed in the market. Also, the biggest thing is comes to any kind of data, garbage in, garbage out, right? So when it comes to like looking at the resumes, we have to consider whatever we are feeding it and training the LLMs on. Do they inherently had a bias? Maybe it was like big tech, and all of them got approved, right? No, like having big names generally doesn't matter that you would be a perfect fit for a new company. So that's one side, and I'm curious to know about like what are your thoughts about the humanistic touch or the cultural fit? Like, are have we like tried to find some keywords that we want to see for looking at the cultural fit? Like, is our LLM kind of like working towards that, or right now we don't have that capability?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the pretty basic MVP we built of this, it was just focusing purely on matching job description against resume, and wasn't going on, hey, like, also look out for these things. If they've worked at this kind of company, this matches, or if they use these kinds of words, that demonstrates X, and therefore give them an extra point or something. It was just a pure like text match. Fuzzy text match, like using a large language model, not a direct text match. I would have thought the cultural fit question, though, is normally something that's going to come up. Normally, something that's going to be evaluated in an interview, and maybe isn't even part of the criteria at the CV screening stage anyway.
Actually, yes. I kind of went off direction with that because just data is so fascinating, and I wanted to get more information, I guess. But one thing that I just I just thought about is like once we are masking the names and we are passing and we're just matching it to the job description itself. Sometimes there's candidates like and yes, this is not a regular fuzzy match, right? This is a fuzzy match. So sometimes candidates can have data science. Like, I generally in my resumes, I would just keep data science, so that implies I know machine learning, I can do end-to-end pipeline work. um, how is the success rate with resumes that have like concentrated information? Because in all my life, I've tried to keep my resume as concise as possible. Um, what is the feedback or what is the data looking like for the resumes where they were concentrated, not many keywords, but they cover the holistic side of the business?
Yeah, that's such a great point, and yeah, not something we've analyzed with our feature, but This is something that's come up on the show before because I was kind of speculating that maybe if companies are going to move more towards automated resume screening using a large language model, suddenly the idea of having a very succinct resume, like, oh, don't make it more than 2 pages, keep it really brief. That's thinking of the resumes and where the audience is a human, but maybe now we need a resume where the audience is a large language model, in which case you have to be a lot more verbose and like incredibly detailed. It can then do the summarization itself. So maybe there's going to be some advantage to having a more detailed resume.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe you would revolutionize how resumes are being built, But I see a pretty good use case around it, and I feel like the advantage of using AI models is you can put as much information because it can like synthesize that and condense that and see if you're a good fit rather than being a human recruiter where like 2 page long or 3 page long resume, you just get bored in text, like you just get lost.
Yeah, exactly. And there's just so many different biases that can come into it, some of which we're aware of, some of which we aren't. I'll tell you a story of at least one of my known biases. So I can remember trying to hire a product analyst years ago in the last company I worked at. And for this company, we had a five-a-side indoor soccer team at our local university. And we played every semester, and we just kept narrowly missing out. Like we'd lose the grand final, I think 5 times in a row. We just needed one extra really good player. And I saw this resume come through, and I saw the hobby section of this guy who was Brazilian. Okay. And I have this thing, I love Brazilians. So straight away, he's like elevated above other people in my mind, which is unfair. But then in his hobby section, it says semi professional footballer from Brazil. So, like, amazing. Exactly. Yes, you can do A/B testing. Yes, you can play football. Job done. And so he got an interview. We didn't end up hiring him, but he definitely got an interview, at least partly because he played football, which obviously has nothing to do with his user behavior analytics ability, and was quite unfair for the other 599 candidates that had applied. And that's just one tiny example of one thing I was conscious of, not even hundreds I'm not even conscious of.
Exactly. And biases exist in every day and aspect of our life. And it's just, it's human nature. So it's not something that we can just get rid of. It's an ongoing process where you have to process, if you like someone, why do I like them? Is it because of their work, or is it actually I like them because they are more susceptible to what I like in my general output or my thinking? They're like more a better fit for my thinking. So yeah, I have tons of such examples. Like even like when you look for I would bring even like smaller things as like people you talk at the gym. You or whatever kind of workout you are in, you would have a bias to like that person more because you share a hobby together. So CrossFitters generally hang out with CrossFitters, powerlifters hang out with powerlifters. And I've been on the both sides because I used to compete in bodybuilding before. And then I switched to powerlifting, and the whole mindset has changed. Now I see a bodybuilder, I'll be like, yeah, he's good. But if I see a powerlifter, it's more like, oh, what's up? What are your numbers looking like? How do I improve this lift? So we are we are prone to biases. That's one of the things that is hard to change.
It is. It's hard or even impossible, probably. I can think specifically of some candidates, again, I've interviewed in the last few years, where if the first few minutes of the call where you're kind of just warming up, if we started talking about football and the English Premier League, this and this and this and this, and then I would be so clouded by my love of football and suddenly my association with this candidate that it becomes very hard to then make a rational decision. It becomes so emotional at that point.
So I hope the candidates who are watching this video know whenever they're applying for a Luba, they do their research on football, right? And they figure out what your favorite club is, and that's it. Like they're already at least 20% ahead of other people.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why I think the biggest benefit of AI in hiring personally is not going to be kind of around the periphery of, oh, it helped me write a JD better or it summarized my interviews, which is helpful. But I think it's going to be in the core decision making of who to hire, which at the moment I think most people are very reluctant to consider. But like, if I'm sitting there going, well, I've just given a candidate a 30% boost in my mind just because they like football. What other things have elevated or reduced people's view? And so I just need to hire the best person. I don't want to be clouded by my own judgment. You know what I mean?
That's such a good use case, and I feel like you never say never when it comes to technology. When cell phones came in, we've been both been part of the generations where people were like, "Who wants the phone on them all time?" And then smartphones came in, and it's now it's like a norm. You don't have a smartphone, people would just look at you weird. So, and AI is evolving by days. Talking about years for that technology to evolve. AI is like there's changes coming in every week, every month, and companies are competing. So I would never say never. And I feel like I would hope in a perfect world, AI would be so unbiased when it comes to like just training for interviews that it also pinpoints your biases. And that would help me as being a better person, I feel like.
Yes, I think so. Uh, Particularly if we'll get to a point where, yeah, even just something as simple as every interview is recorded, transcribed, summarized, and then being able to look at the end of the hiring process across 3 or 4 interviews that the candidates had, and then the AI maybe giving the interviewer feedback. Oh, by the way, make sure you mention this thing because the candidates mentioned how important it is in 3 of the 4 interviews to pick up their kids from school. So make sure you mention, yes, they can do the school pickup. Like all those, I can think of probably hundreds of little things like that that otherwise we might miss that surely could make the process better if done right.
Definitely, yes. Also, I've what are your thoughts about, and because we are kind of delving into like a feedback when we talk about, so are we also implementing some kind of like a feedback mechanism for our AI for the candidates by AI, or is that a thing for the future?
But for us in our little beta feature, that's for the future. For the skills test, we have that. And so we always encourage our customers to leave the feedback on. So basically, as soon as a candidate finishes a test, they get instant scores where they've done well, where they need to improve, how to improve, etc. Uh, and I certainly hope that, yeah, for the CV screening tools that lots of companies would be building at the moment, that they would have the ability to share the feedback with a candidate. My thought process is maybe companies might be reluctant to open up that transparency and say, well, we've rejected your resume. Here's the 5 reasons we've done that. Here's how we scored you, which should be available because that's what the large language model will have. It should have that output, but I should, but I can see how companies might be reticent to do that. As far as I know, particularly in a market like the US, companies seem to be worried about maybe getting sued if they say the wrong thing or what have you. Is that something you've seen?
So first thing, EU is the leader when it comes to like AI rules around AI. So anything that involves hiring or any AI, EU is pretty. The norms have been set. Like you have to be pretty clear about explaining to the candidates or anyone that there's an AI involvement to it. Um, when it comes to US, I uh, I don't have much insight on like how the industry trends going on just on the AI hiring, but I could see potential reasons why. Because if the feedback is unbiased, it might hurt someone's feelings too. So, so it's just no, I think in a perfect world, it'll come to a stage where like we would be able to provide like certain insights where a candidate figures out what they need to improve. But for now, I feel like just helping candidates because it's so stressful to look for jobs, and I know certain people who've been like searching for jobs for almost like 6 months now. It's like having some transparency, which might even be just where your application is at, who's reviewing it, not just the person. Maybe HR is reviewing it, the hiring manager is reviewing it. Just a status update is a first step towards that transparency. And eventually, I feel like we can build a perfect world where we are able to provide candidates a true and honest insight of what we think about their skill set. And someone's opinion doesn't gauge your potential. So you might like, I I don't know what sports we want to talk about, like football. Let's say Ronaldo like doesn't perform every game. He does, but let's just say he can have a bad game, and that doesn't make him a bad player. Or Messi can mess up a game, but that doesn't make him like not the greatest player. I don't know who you incline more towards, but the that's one thing. Like candidates would also have to be get to a level where like they're accepting of their feedback, because no feedback is bad unless you take it in a negative way.
Yes, and it's from such a small sample size as well. Like an interview might be 30 to 60 minutes with one other person. And I know from doing recruitment, often it's like a subtle thing that a candidate might do or say that then seems to cloud everything in this negativity. Like I can remember just a few months ago working with a company where in the very first interview, a candidate got asked to self-rate themselves in SQL. And they mentioned that they thought they were a 10 out of 10, which I wouldn't say I'm a 10 out of 10, even if I thought I was, because I realized that's going to come across as appearing a little bit arrogant or like I can't learn anything. But it was just that one answer to that one question that carried through the entire hiring process with them, the perception that they're overconfident, uncoachable, arrogant, which was not necessarily true at all. It was just all extrapolated from just this one word, this one number that they gave once.
And that's a big bias if you think about it. Surely that never would be a good answer for me, but I would like try to gauge the person, because what like knowledge is a seed. Nobody's gonna be perfect, but what if they are someone who regularly dive deep into it, and they think they can come out of it, any problem? Because from a candidate's perspective, they're already like job markets currently, like current scenario in US is like job markets, an average time of people getting hired, from what I know, is almost like 3 months now. The whole hiring process, generally hiring process is like 32 days, but people are there's polls out there where they're saying they apply for 100 jobs, maybe get one interview. So the market's pretty tense and competitive out there. And in that sense, like candidates do get fear mongered, and they think if I'm not the best, I might have to like put my best foot forward, and they might be really confident with SQL. I feel like that's where recruiters should not get biased, and AI would help. In the sense is like, don't take it as arrogance, just take it as like this man or this person is willing to do whatever because they think they're like close to an SME. And at that point, if you have that mindset, any problem can be solved. I would have rather given them a SQL query, not setting them for failure, but it would be challenging enough to show them the reality, and they would have like kind of gauged their performance on that. But yes, at that point, like the tools or solution that Aluba is bringing up would play an important role, because for AI, that's one data point, but that doesn't just takes away all the other good work the candidate or the applicant has.
We'd mentioned earlier, yeah, the kind of stressful candidate market at the moment and how maybe providing a bit of feedback, having a bit of transparency could help reduce that a little bit. I did just speak this morning to Ariana Moon, who heads up talent acquisition for Greenhouse, the applicant tracking system. And they started rolling out a really interesting feature whereby they have these 4 different badges that an employer can get on their job ad to kind of verify they've done things in a certain way. And one of them is over ghosting. And so because Greenhouse has access to all their customers' data, they can see exactly down to an application level which companies have gotten back to a candidate and which haven't. And so I think they have this 95% metric that, okay, if you have hit more than 95% feedback, then you can put this badge on your job description. If you don't, then it can't go on there. And I think that's a really great way of doing it, because what gets measured gets monitored. This doesn't involve any complicated AI. This is just tracking things and being honest about it.
Yeah, and I think hiring is a two-way street. So you have, even though like you might be a foundation, like a pretty well formed business, but at the same time, you still have to seek confidence from the potential employee that's coming to you, and also providing them confidence in yourself. So it's a two-way street where like you cannot just any relationship when it comes to that. I would say in general, this is my philosophy around it: is every relationship you can only take so much out of it until you start giving it back. Like if you're not putting much back to a relationship, you cannot get much out. So the companies need to understand, like if they want their candidates to be transparent, to be honest, and fit in the company culture, they have to do the same, and they have to provide feedback. Like you can be X amount of, like you can have X amount of work. At that point, you automate it, but you still need to have clear communication, because ghosting is one of the most frustrating things when it comes to like hiring. And I think there was a research done by LinkedIn about ghosting, and I don't know the statistics about it, so please don't call me out. But it was like 70% of the candidates pointed towards like the hardest part about like uh, of the job search is just being ghosted. And I think world could be way better if we are just transparent and let people know a simple feedback.
100% agree with that. And actually, I have maybe a connected bit of research, which was, yeah, between LinkedIn and also I think Greenhouse were involved talking about not necessarily ghosting, but ghost jobs, as in like fake jobs. And they found that roughly 18 to 22% of jobs were what they classified as ghost jobs, which is not necessarily completely fake, but ones that didn't end up with anyone getting hired at all, for which there could be many reasons. One of which is just the role gets pulled, like the company's maybe not going as strong as they thought they would, and all these kinds of things. But this is one of the things that prompted Greenhouse to start doing this more transparent things where you as a candidate can then know a little bit more about the company's track record, which I think, yeah, it's a really good improvement.
I feel like yes, companies should have some kind of accountability when it comes to that. And luckily, all the employers I previously worked for, I haven't experienced like ghost jobs. So I cannot comment on that. But as a job seeker, if I was in the market, it would be really bad for me, and I would be so I don't know. I don't have better words. I would be just pissed about it. And yes, so any company who's doing that should be held accountable. And shout out to such platforms that are bringing those transparency things out.
Guru, if you could ask our next guest a question about hiring, what would you choose to ask them?
It's a tough question. Just let me process, because the biggest question is biases, but I feel like we are kind of close to solving that problem. One thing is, when it comes to hiring, there's vision, there's a current time hire, like the recent request, what do you want to get fixed, and then there's a long time hire, someone who would you would nurture and who you want to see as a growth leader. So how do I would want to know, like, and this would help me because I'm hiring right now. Is like, how do leaders look at candidates from immediate hire perspective and also from a long-term hire perspective? Because sometimes the request can be so pressing that you gotta have that person, but how do you gauge them for a long-term employee as the company?
Yep, that's a great question. I don't think that's one we've asked anyone yet, that kind of short term versus long term horizons. That's a great one. I'll ask that to whoever our next guest is sometime early next week and be interested to see what they have to say. Uh, Guru, it's been a great conversation today. We've covered off a lot of ground. We've deep dived into a bit of AI and hiring and a few other areas. We've learned a little bit about yourself. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing all your insights with us today.
Oh, thanks a lot, Tim. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to keep talking to you.